Man, there's a lot of people in modern society in need of guidance. And I'm going to be the first to say, I'm not someone you should be seeking guidance from. I hope that when you watch these videos, you just, kind of relate to what it's like to be your average guy navigating the normal world. And that my opinions aren't really above anyone else's. This is just the content I push out. And if something I say on here resonates with you, then, maybe you're inspired to, take up your own story, not necessarily copy mine. Because I've been pretty blank on my personal channel. Like, I consider this one just my miscellaneous one where I post whatever thoughts, right? No actual theme, unless in the future one kind of tends to pick up or gain steam. But even then, no matter how far I make it in this sphere, I just kind of hope that, I'm still seen as human and not like a guidance figure, just, a normal person. But sometimes a lot of young, impressionable children and even adults who have lacked guidance figures in their childhood, it can be really weird that, like, when you do something or you accomplish something, even if it's not the highest echelon, you can not only inspire people, but get people to look at you as a guidance figure instead of somebody who just started the journey a while ago and is going about it. Maybe it's a byproduct. I don't know. But I remember like a year ago, I had earned my blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And it's not the total mastery of the martial art, but it is a milestone that you should be proud of if you have started that journey. Because out of all the people who start Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, only 10% make it to blue. The number that make it to black is even less, and I intend to be one of the ones that makes it to black belt in the future. But as someone who has merit despite being a total hobbyist, right, who does like to compete from time to time, you remember where you used to be when you first started and you walk through that gym and you see everybody with the colored belts and then they slap that white belt on you and you start doing some kickboxing classes and you learn to get a little bit better at the art. You do some hard sparring rounds and you end up getting better. But you fast forward a number of years later and here you are and you're a way more seasoned version of yourself. You're not the toughest guy out there, but you have noticed a lot of differences in your attitude towards life, your physical appearance, your demeanor. A lot of people ask me if I've been in the military, and I always have to say no. But it's because I just come off as so disciplined with everything I do. But especially one person in particular who's a new person to this art, who I actually was charitable and gave a gi to because he started around the same age that I did. When I was 23, and I didn't start with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I was just like, I want to do MMA because I was watching UFC, and I felt like I needed to do something. I didn't really focus on Jiu-Jitsu until like a couple of years ago in particular, but he started this journey at the age that I did. But it almost seemed like he had the same problem that I did, is he viewed it as a, Mr. Miyagi type deal where you're going to get a mentorship and you're going to live like this Karate Kid fantasy, I guess you could say. Because I did have a bit of a diet version of that when I just started. I thought that every coach was necessarily for you. Now, I did have a lot of coaches who were really high energy and really fun to train with, but out of all of the ones that I've trained with, only one or two have really been a personal connection, or like they're actually trying to better me in life, or at least try to be an example to set so I could be a better version of myself. And you know what? That's okay, because a lot of the people that I have worked with in that realm, they're human too. They, do their thing. They're there for themselves like everybody else. But when you see a kid come in through that door and he has the same thing, and then he starts to put you on that same pedestal. And I even had to have a conversation with that because I did let him have a gi and a new belt because he was training at a dojo that I was affiliated with for a long time. And, I just passed down good words to them and put in good words for them. And he put on the gi and put on all the stuff. And, but I think he thought that I was going to be his best friend, or I was going to necessarily be the Batman to his Robin. When I'm not really Batman. If anything, I'm more like a Nightwing figure. I used to have a Batman figure as when I was a Robin, right? When I was the understudy of a guy. But, what happened was we had a similar falling out to the Batman Robin fallout with Dick Grayson in the comics. Dick Grayson and Batman stopping a good fit for each other. Some stuff went down, and then before you know it, they had to go their separate ways. And then Robin still remembers it, but still wants to do it. And he takes on his own mantle of Nightwing. And it could be a little bit of a love-hate relationship between Batman and Nightwing sometimes. I think that's why I like the Nightwing rash guard when I'm training Nogi. But I had to sit this kid down because, I get really concerned with this, not just in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu realm, but the realm overall. We have a lot of lost souls. We have a lot of, people who are wanting this guidance, or they want to put anyone they can on a pedestal. And sometimes, like what I just did was probably better than what we get online a lot, where you have a lot of these quote-unquote red pill guys who are putting on an act to try and promise these guys a lot of money because they feel lost in this world, or they feel like society's kind of forgotten about them. And I'm one of those guys that doesn't necessarily agree with everything the red pill has to say, but I do understand why it's there, and I do understand that there are a lot of people who feel lost, and you do cling to something as a human being when you feel lost. A lot of people like to feel like they're a part of something, and sometimes it could get them to get misguided or go down a bad path, or, buy any ideology that might change them. Not necessarily that change is a bad thing. But when you allow someone to be, quote unquote, the Batman to your Robin, you're allowing them to dictate that they could change everything they want about you. You can't pick and choose. When honestly, the best way I usually learn is I do talk to a lot of different people, but I don't put them on that guidance pedestal. But I do learn a lot of life lessons by watching them live their life or watching their examples. But a couple of times I did sit down and have conversations with this kid just out of kind of just to let him know, okay, you know what? I know you're on your own path, and I am rooting for you to do, what you're going to do. But once I understood that our motives were completely different, like I was trying to get more discipline in my life. He was using this to try to go to bars and impress women, mainly for all the wrong reasons. And when you have a beginner fighter who's going over to a bar to try and mog a bunch of guys, that's kind of a recipe that something's going to backfire on him, or he's going to come across someone who's really going to stand up to him. But the fact that when we talked, it was like he would remember stuff that we used to talk about, or I told him, just so he could try to force us having something in common with him. And I asked him like that, are you just saying all this stuff that I've clearly told you what I don't want to talk about, and trying to force a relationship or brute force your way into my life, or to have a specific role in my life? Because I basically told him in a very kind way that that's just not going to happen. He knew that I, uploaded stuff to the internet. So he started talking about that. He, knew that there were certain events in the world that I was aware of. So he started talking, even though I don't like to talk about them repeatedly because I can't have any control over them. But it got to a point where you could tell he was trying to brute force me to be a mentor figure in his life because he was in desperate need. So I did sit him down, and I completely was open and honest with him that, no, I'm not going to be your best friend. I'm not going to be your mentor. Now, I do wish you well, and I do want you to keep that key, and I do want you to do with the art what you will, or take from it what you are. But what you're really looking for through this art is going to show as you start. For me, it was self-improvement, being more stoic, being more disciplined, being more responsible. I was partying way too much. For him, it just seems like he's trying to one-up everybody else, and that could be a very dangerous path, especially in this sport where there's a lot of guys who have been doing this a very long time, and then you carry that into society where not everybody's at a dojo 24/7, so they don't share the whole culture. I just told him that mainly it's good for him that he's trying something new to try to evolve himself into something that people would respect, but if he goes about it in a corrupt way, it's going to have the opposite effect. That and the way he was kind of putting it up on a pedestal wasn't too realistic at all. And I wasn't trying to say this to really talk down on the guy or anything like that, but I was being open and honest and not trying to sell him this grift that, oh, he's going to, pay me $50 a month for some, online course that you could probably figure out with common sense. Because the last thing I want to do is take advantage of someone's need for guidance or some sort of mentorship and tell him, because I think long term that could be the better thing to do. That no, I'm not going to be a guide because one, I'm not the kind of guide you really want to follow. And obviously, I think he kind of just didn't really say anything that day. He kind of like packed it in and went home, mainly because he wasn't expecting that to come out of my mouth. But in the long run, I honestly hope that he sees it as I was probably trying to tell him a reality check, because if he wants to look for someone to tell him what to do or fill him in on how to think or feel about certain things, he's giving over his agency to someone else when his growth and his journey is his responsibility. And at the end of the day, he has to decide really who he wants to be, not somebody else. He can't let somebody else decide that for him. And I think the bottom line of this video is me just basically saying that, I know a lot of people are looking for guidance figures and everything like that. And I really hope that people, take bits and pieces of information from everywhere and always be looking to learn new things. But to ask someone to lay it out for them could just be a very dangerous way. And, like what I did was the brutally honest way. It wasn't an easy conversation to have because, the kid was very naive and I didn't want to break his spirit. But I think I had to, kind of be a little cruel to be a little kind in this aspect and give him a bit of a reality check, because if he didn't have it, who knows? He might have tried to model himself after my life and he would have realized we are two very different people, and maybe my path or walking in my shoes wouldn't be something he's handled. And the only reason I say this is because when I started, the path I was, there were a lot of people like that who would exploit people who were looking for guidance or a mentor, or who were trying to live a fantasy that some MMA movie put in their head, right? And I'm not saying, although, yeah, you have to hold people to responsibility when they take a lot of those movies and pop culture and music videos literally. That's why like 500 Days of Summer is one of my favorite comedy movies, because it talks about how that kind of pop culture and the romanticization of like music and everything like that can morph our reality and give us unrealistic expectation. It just kind of leads and sets us up for some heartbreak. And that's the thing, is that I wanted to be part of that cycle that didn't give this kid some false hope or false idea that I was going to, mentor him or guide him or be, his guiding figure at all. And that's just what I got to say. But, I really just hope that what you take from that story is, if you feel like you resonate with me or that kid, or you're looking to start something, you got to make sure, when you start your self-improvement journey, you take bits and pieces of info from everyone, but don't give your free agency to anybody, not even me, to decide what's best for you, because, there's a lot of us who have been through a lot, and it could leave us kind of lost in trying to get bearing in life. And especially in this society where everyone's so kind of like selfish and in their own phones and in their own little worlds, it could be a whirlwind, especially for those that are lost. It's harder than ever to be able to get the help that we necessarily need, just based on, how corrupt sometimes the therapy structures can be with therapists, how it's all money driven and everything like that. It just kind of seems like we buy a lot of lies, and, we kind of don't see through the whole picture, or we pick what we want to actually really see as the truth, or we tell ourselves some lies without actually being open-minded and hearing what we need to hear in order to readjust and move forward. But that's what I got to say. I don't want to talk too much or get too philosophical any longer. I'll see you guys on the next one. But, think for yourselves and decide for yourselves. And, if you actually genuinely enjoyed this video, leave a thumbs up, leave a like, subscribe. I'd like to evolve more content on this channel, my personal one, because I got some other, projects I'm working on online and outside of line, like certain businesses that I'm building up. But it's like for this one, I know that it's been lacking, so I wanted to post a couple things. But thank you very much for watching. Have a good one, and take care of yourself.